we have here, if you could blow that up a little bit more, the Jewish DNA of Christianity. And I want to first say that this is not an academic thesis of scholars versus rabbis. We're not going to be talking about how the synagogue influenced the Christian services. We're not going to talk about Jesus or prove that Jesus was a Jew. That's assumed that we know that Jesus was a Jew. This is me as an outsider, a Christian pastor, as I have for the last 3 years really been getting to know Jews and looking at Jews, reading about Jews, meeting. Tomorrow I'm going to be having breakfast with the head rabbi over all the rabbis of Miami-Dade County. I'm having lunch with a group of rabbis and pastors. And as I've gotten to know them, I've gotten to see more of what I call our DNA. So I make some generalizations, I make some stereotypes, and some people might say, well, I don't know, I know a Jew and he's not like that, or that might be, which is why, as I said last week, eat the fish and spit out the bones. If you've got any fish on your plate right now, I know you'll do that, but what I'm really saying here is if, the things I say that touch your heart or that hit your mind, you go, amen, eat that, swallow it, think about it, meditate on it. The things you might go, well, I don't know about that, just for the time being, spit out the bone. Just as I said, don't spit them at me, okay? So, we are talking here about the Jewish DNA of Christianity. And the question is, what is DNA? We mentioned last week that it supposedly, and actually does contain all the information about your life, about your physical life. Everything about you is somehow written in your DNA. It's been compared to being the blueprint of your life. Pretty amazing what God has done and how they can identify every person in the world by their DNA. A part of the long strand of DNA is called a gene. Sometimes the genes are repeated in sections and sometimes they're not. But I'm talking about 12 genes of Jewish DNA that are in Christians. 12 different things. Last week, of course, we talked about what did we talk about last week? Resilience, exactly. And each of these 12 genes, as we said, have something to teach us. This was a picture we saw last week of my great-grandfather, Old Cap Prosel, the pioneer farmer. And the more I learned about him, the more I found that I've got his DNA in me. I've got that pioneer spirit, which is why I had no problem moving into the inner city as a white guy in 1982. I've got his farming, love for me, my backyard, I love gardening. I've got all kinds of things because it's in me. And the more you find out about your spiritual DNA, the closer you will be to God, the more you'll become the man God created you to be. Each of the 12 genes we're talking about has been in Jews for centuries. Second of all, it's in the Bible. It's biblical. I'm not making this stuff up. We're just giving a talk from the secular world. Third, it's still recognizable in Jews today. Fourth, it's in the DNA of Christians. If you've been born again by the Spirit of God, you have, as the scriptures say, Christ in you, the hope of glory. Jesus was a direct descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He had his physical DNA, and he also had their spiritual DNA. As God chose them as his chosen people, they were different than all the other people in the world up to the time of Jesus. You got to understand that. God chose just the Jews out of all the people in the world and said, you are my chosen people. You are my family. I will be your God. They began to consider God as their father, as we know as Christians. That made a difference than just the ordinary physical reality. Well, today, first of all, last weekend was resilience, which is the ability to bounce back from a hard time and make something good happen. Today we want to go into the second spiritual gene, which is creativity. I don't know if you know it, but Albert Einstein was a Jew. A strong belief. I just read in the news this afternoon that they sold 6 of his letters that talked about God and Israel, and they sold for a total of about $400,000 in an auction today. Because Einstein, in one way you can say maybe he was the smartest man, one of the smartest men who ever lived. as a Jew, a believer in God, a supporter of Israel. A lot we can learn from him. You see what he says. Creativity is seeing. I heard that, did you hear that? Creativity is seeing what everyone else has seen, but thinking what no one else has thought. Now, we think about with Einstein in the big scale, but it could be in the small scale too. You see a need in you that there's no barbershops around, you decide to open up a barbershop. You see what everybody else saw, but you also see something they didn't see. Now, Einstein also said that creativity is kind of like your brain having fun. As a kid, I used to always get in trouble for daydreaming in school. But daydreaming is a good thing, and I've never stopped. I encourage you to daydream, because what it really is your imagination creating things. Now, talking about creativity, in the news today, they're always talking about fake news. You know what that is, right? Well, I have 2 fake news about creativity that I want to expose tonight. The first one is, there's a fake belief around that only a few people are creative. People think, oh, you know, it's those not many, and I'm just not creative. That's not true. You were created in the image of the Creator. Amen. Created in the image of the Creator. That means you are creative. Amen. That is not true that only few people are creative. And second of all, people say that, oh, creativity just has to do with the arts. It's musicians are creative, dancers are creative. That's not true. Creative is every part of your life. Yeah. You know, they talk about our brain has 2 sides, the left side and the right side. And one side, they always say, is the creative side. It's the daydreaming side. It's the side that likes to have visions and think about things in the future. The other side of our brain, they say, is more meticulous. It's more organized. It's the business side of our brain. Well, I've got a simple secret for you. You've got both sides of that brain. None of us have just one. As we said last week, with siblings, every sibling has a little different mix of genes in their DNA, and every Christian has a little different mix. But we've all got both. And we've got to get rid of saying things, well, I'm not that way, or I can't do that, or that's not me. Knock that out of your vocabulary, because it's just not true. So let's start talking about Abraham. Abraham is our father in faith. He is the one whose DNA we now have. And we can see in scriptures the hints, because it doesn't go into a great detail of what he actually was doing with his time. It talks about how he traveled, how he built an altar, remember, and worshiped the Lord 7 times. But we can see in Genesis 12:2, it says, God said, you are to be a blessing. Now, let me ask you a question. If you see somebody out on the street who's penniless, do you think he's going to be much of a blessing to you? He just can't be, unless he's got a good attitude, and that, without any money at all, is hard to keep. The next verse, 12:3, God said, I will bless those who bless you, but I will curse those who curse you, and by you all families on earth will be blessed. By Abraham, all families on earth will be blessed. Some Christians want to say that, oh, the Jews have been wiped out of God's kingdom. That's not true. The scriptures, if you read through the New Testament, you'll see how he still has much in store. And one reality is that all families on earth, and part of that is through Jesus. Jesus, the descendant of Abraham, has blessed so many people. The third verse up there in 13:2 says, Abram became wealthy with much cattle, silver, and gold. Again, we don't know how he did it, but obviously he was creating. He was in all different places. He had to do all kinds of things. We know he had a lot of animals because of the story of him and Lot separating because they had so many animals. But he ended up with a lot of gold and silver too. He was a creative businessman at the same time. And one of the things that amazes me the most is that when the story when Lot was captured, some kings came in, made war, captured Lot and all his family and took him away. Abram gathered his men together and went after him. It said that Abram had 318 men in his household. Now, a more modern way of saying might say he had 318 men who worked for him. Now what do you think kind of a thing here going on if you have 318? That's a big business.
Yeah.
And they would move from town to town with all their flocks and all their people.
Yeah.
And amazing. And those were just the men, because these are the ones who went to war to get back Lot. Plus there were wives and children, usually times 3, times 4, times 5.
Yeah.
This was his, he's talking about entourage. Huh? Okay, his grandson Jacob, talking about creativity. In a different way, he was kind of what we might call sneaky creative. He tricked his brother out of the birthright by creatively seeing, remember Einstein, see something nobody else sees? He saw his hungry was starving to death after he came in from working all day. And he tricked him creatively out of his birthright for simply a pot of soup. Later, he tricked his father on his deathbed in order to get the blessing from his father. You got to think about things like that. I'm not saying it was good, but you got to think about things like that. Then he had to run for his life because his brother wanted to kill him for tricking him so much, and he went to his uncle, and his uncle out-tricked him until an amazing thing, one of the most creative stories in the Bible. That doesn't go in great detail, Genesis 30, but it says that he had worked for his uncle about 20 years, and uncle hadn't paid him. And he went to his uncle and said, hey, that ain't right. And the uncle said, so what do you want for your pay? And he said, we've got all these sheep. He says, you keep all the sheep that are solid colored. And let me just have the ones that are speckled or spotted, because the wool isn't going to be so valuable. Because if you don't have all white wool, all black wool, it's not going to be worthy. So they were like the not as good. And his uncle said, okay, I'll let you have all the spotted and speckled sheep now and whenever are born. And then that night, the uncle told his 3 sons, take all the spotted and speckled sheep and get out of here. Quick, take it tonight. And they went 3 days away, so Jacob couldn't find any of them. You know what Jacob did? He said, I want spotted and speckled sheep. He took a bunch of twigs from branches and a knife, and he took the bark off for an inch and left it for an inch. Took it off for an inch, left it for an inch. Took it off, made all these spotted and striped twigs. And he went to the place where the animals drank water. This is in the Bible. We talk about creative. Went to the place where the animals drank water, which is also where they mated. And when they were in heat, and when the strong animals came, not just the other ones, he put all these spotted and speckled things in front of their eyes as they were mating. And they gave birth to spotted and speckled young. And so he ended up getting almost all of the sheep from his uncle. Creative thinking. Now, the most amazing thing, well, it says actually, the scripture says about Jacob, in this way the man became very rich and had large flocks, along with male and female slaves, camels, and donkeys. Again, he got there with nothing. He arrived at his uncle's place without anything but the clothes on his back. Creativity is thinking outside the box. And I think the greatest way that Jacob thought outside the box was when he wrestled with God.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, who would think to wrestle with God?
Yeah.
If God showed up for us, we'd probably be in our face, right?
Yeah.
He wrestled with God, and not only did he wrestle with God, but he wouldn't let go. God was for somehow saying, let me go, and he said, I won't let you go, Lord, unless you bless me. And he held him and let me go. I won't let you go unless you bless me, until you bless me. And finally the Lord threw his hip out and let him go. He let him go. And God said, to me as a Christian, one of the most shocking things, this is my kind of man.
Yes.
This is who I've been looking for.
Exactly.
You're going to be the father of all my people.
Yes.
Now, you know, he only took one son of Abraham and blessed. He only took one son of Isaac and blessed. But Jacob was the beginning of the Jews. He took all the 12 sons of Jacob, and from them have come all the Jews. And he said, after he got up from the wrestle, God said, your name will no longer be Jacob, it will be Israel, which means wrestled with God.
Yeah.
That's what it means.
Yes.
Not the normal Christian kind of thinking about it, what a follower of God should be. It is what's called chutzpah. He had a lot of chutzpah. You know what chutzpah is? It's super boldness, it's audacity, it's sticking out where nobody says you should go. We're going to have 1 week just talking about chutzpah, because it's in your DNA.
Yeah.
You might not have known that you got that in you too, and that even Jesus encourages to be that way.
Yes.
That's another week. Jews believe that they have the mission to be different. Whenever the Jews were exiled, they'd be in a new place, like we talked last week, and yet they'd creatively adapt to the new environment, start new businesses, and before you know it, going from persecution to prominence time after time after time. Outsiders, which is what the Jews have been most of their life, have to think outside the box.
Yeah.
And when you do think outside the box, you get creative. And like last week, we talked about some of these things are like muscles. Maya Angelou says, oh, well, first let me tell you that. I think that if Abraham is the father of faith, I think we should call Jacob the father of creative chutzpah. Right? It's not scriptural, but not the term. Here's what Maya Angelou said. She says that, just lost my place here. You can't use up creativity. The more you use, the more you have. Now, you know we talked about the two sides of the brain? The Jews have, better I think than any other people, used creativity on both sides at once. And the best example of Jews combining that organized business side with the creative side is Hollywood. Do you know that Jews started Hollywood? Jews still run Hollywood. People complain about how many Jews are out there, but it's because they started it. They really did. It's the perfect combination of artistic creativity and business creativity. Let me tell you about a guy named Shmuel Gelbfitz. He was a Jew born in Poland back in 1879 in a time when there were pogroms. How many of you know what a pogrom is? It's a horrible killing of Jews. The non-Jews would come surprise into a town and start killing all the Jews. And any that God could run for their life and get away couldn't back. They had to go on and find some new place to live. This was a common thing in Eastern Europe for about 100 years. And young Shmuel, his family went through several programs and he got sick and tired of it. At the age of 16, he walked all the way across Poland, across Germany, and he walked across France. He got to the English Channel, he made his way to England. And when he got to England, as you might expect, he changed his name to Samuel Goldfish. He started working there, but he didn't speak any English. He learned English, he taught himself English by taking newspapers out of the garbage that people had thrown away. And he taught himself good English. He saved his money, and he made it to the U.S. a few years later. When he got to the U.S., his first job was sweeping the floor in a glove factory. How many of you would want that job, huh? Not exactly high class, but he was willing to do anything. He talked to the boss, and he talked them into letting him give a try as a glove salesman. And within 3 years, he was the #1 salesman in the business. In 1912, he changed his name again to Samuel Goldwyn. And he met his wife Blanche and her brother. They were both minor actors up in the Catskills in northern New York. But they lived in New York City, and the three of them decided one day to go see the newfangled thing called a motion picture. So they went to a movie house and watched a movie, and they were blown away. First time, if you can imagine, I mean, nobody had ever seen things. Blown away. But not only were they blown away, they came out saying, we could do that. We could do that too. They talked to a friend named Cecil B. DeMille, who was an actor, and they said, join us and be the producer. Blanche heard that in California the weather was good all year round, so you could film 365 days a year, so they moved to Los Angeles. They knew it was the land of palm trees and warm weather, and it sounded good. So they moved there. But this picture is modern. You can see the cars and the pavement. This is a picture of the time they moved. This was Main Street in Los Angeles. If you notice, unpaved street, no cars yet. That's how old it was. This was 1909. No cars at all. And they knew that this was the place for them to be. And so they started working. They made the first film, and it was really a learning experience. It wasn't very good. But the second film they made was a blockbuster. It was the original film called Birth of a Nation. And it's still studied in film schools today. That's how good it was. They knew how to make movies, and they made them well. Cecil B. DeMille, their producer, said this: creativity is a drug I can't live without. If any of you have ever created anything, made anything with your hands, done anything, even girls remember the first time you cooked a good dinner, you feel good about doing something like that. That's what he felt about making movies. They were so successful, after just a couple years they sold their business for a lot of money. And their original company is still in existence today. You may have heard of it. It's called Paramount. But they want something better. So they joined with two other Jews who were out there and created MGM. You notice the G in the middle is Goldwyn? That's our friend Shmuel Goldfitz with his third name, Samuel Goldwyn. He joined with two other Jews, one of whom was Louis B. Mayer, one of the M's. Louis B. Mayer was another Jew who came from Russia and immigrated here, and he was a junk dealer. But then he went out to Hollywood and started to try to get into film and was successful. He became one of the greatest producers of all time in Hollywood. And you know why? Because he only made films about family values.
Wow.
He said, I'm here to sell family values. And he all famously said he would never make a movie his kids couldn't go see.
Wow.
Very successful. Where did his family values come from? Two places: the Bible and his home life. In those days, Jews spoke Yiddish. Yiddish was kind of a combination between German and Hebrew. And it was kind of a slang thing, stuff like oy vey. You ever hear somebody say oy vey? That's still Yiddish, okay? So when they were writing their film scripts, they thought about their Hebrew lives, their upbringing, their neighbors, things that happened in their neighborhood, but they couldn't make all these movies about Jews because most of the people who wanted to go to movies were Christians. So they came up with what I think is a fantastic slogan: think Yiddish, but write British. They would think about their situations, their family value situations, and then translate them into a scene that was for everybody, more typical American, and were very successful. Interestingly though, the first major Hollywood singing success movie was The Jazz Singer. And it was a story about a young Jewish man whose father was a cantor. And his father wanted him to be a cantor. I was surprised the first time I went to a Jewish service. More than half of the service is sung. And the cantor sings. The cantor is on at least an equal par with the rabbi, because they're singing all these prayers. I have a good friend who's 96 years old. He's a Holocaust survivor. He was a cantor for 40 years. His father was a cantor. His grandfather was a cantor. Say a prayer for him right now quickly. He's not in the best of health. He's got some difficulties. But he said when he was a young man, he was thinking about what to do with his life. And he said, honestly, I was thinking about becoming a rabbi because I knew rabbis made more money. He says, I went to my father and I told him. My father, the cantor, my grandfather, I said, I'm thinking about this because they make money. He said, son, rabbis talk to the people. Cantors sing to God. So that touched my heart, and I became a cantor. He was a cantor for 40 years after he got out of the concentration camp in the Holocaust. So the Jazz Singer movie was about a young man. His father was a cantor. Father wanted him to become a cantor, and he didn't want to. And he went out, like a lot of people, Christians today, and became an entertainer. And it was a huge success across the country. But again, they couldn't make all these movies about Jews. It's been said that Thomas Edison invented the motion picture camera, but Jewish entrepreneurs created Hollywood. And that's the truth. You know, there's only 2% of Americans are Jewish. And yet more than half of the TV and movie producers today are Jewish. There are so many out there. Some of it is because they passed it out through the years family. And a lot of them you might not even recognize. These actors, Harrison Ford is Jewish. Who'd have thought that when you saw Star Wars or Indiana Jones? It was a Jew up there doing all that stuff. These people totally break down the stereotype of what's a Jew like. Seth Rogen, Goldie Hawn, Dustin Hoffman, Paul Newman. Same thing is true with comedians. And this is just a little Google sometime. Jewish actor, Jewish comedians. Here's a few of them. Everybody knows Seinfeld's Jewish, but did you know the Three Stooges were Jewish? Oy vey, right? It's amazing. Of course, Billy Crystal, Adam Sandler, Jon Stewart, the political comedian. Huh? Singers, Adam Levine to Pink. I mean, a little bit of variety there, right? From Bob Dylan to Barbra Streisand. And the list go on and on. By the way, do you know that it was Jews who started the 3 major television networks? NBC by David Sarnoff, CBS by William Paley, and ABC by Leonard Goldenson. All right, let's stop for a second and take some of this in. But understand, this was not Jewish conspiracy. This is Jewish creativity. Fact, God has made each of us creative.
Yeah.
Fact, Romans 12:6 says every Christian has gifts.
Amen.
Fact, creatively use your gifts for the good of all. That's what Romans says.
Yeah.
So act. Discover your abilities. What are you good at? What do you like doing? What do people compliment you about? Find out what your talents are. Don't be afraid to make mistakes or even to fail.
Yeah.
That's part of the discovery process. Next, use creativity in your DNA to advance no matter what you find is your strength, your gifts. Be creative. Think outside the box. Think what no one else is doing. It takes time to do that, but that's okay. And you will become, the last point here, you'll become the person God made you to be.
Amen.
Get those wheels turning. That's what that picture says. Get those wheels in your brain talking. I'm talking today mostly about business and arts, but creativity should be in every part of your life. Not only in starting a business, but daily in our jobs, in our family, which we're going to talk about in a few weeks. We should be creative and do things. You know, I understand why so many young men are still playing video games. Because when you complete and get to a certain level, you feel accomplishment. You feel satisfaction. I did something. I won. I made it. Let me encourage you to use that same yearning for accomplishment and for achievement. Create a business plan. Even if you never start your business, think that about it. You know, go out and think about how to help the poor. Tutor somebody who needs tutoring. Be a mentor, a big brother, a big sister. Find a new hobby. Decide you're going to read more. Be creative. It's harder, it takes more work, but I guarantee the feeling of satisfaction and achievement is going to be far greater than winning at a video game.
Amen.
Nothing wrong with that. Like I said, I understand why. It's that yearning to do good, to win, to achieve something. But how much more we can do that in so many other ways.
Yeah.
Now, the first place we really see this developing in the Jews is in the building of the Tabernacle. And you may remember at that point, God chose 2 men, and here I'm talking about one. God says, I have chosen Bezalel, and I have filled him with the Spirit of God, with wisdom, with understanding, with knowledge, and with all kinds of skills to make artistic designs. When they made the tabernacle, it was pretty complicated. There was all kinds of work to be done. And don't forget, they were slaves. They didn't have occupations. They made bricks out of mud. That's what they did. And now all of a sudden, God tells them to make this intricate tabernacle. He told it to Moses. Moses passed it on. They needed wood for all those posts. They had to find trees. They had men who had to learn how to cut down trees. Men who had to square those trees down and cut them down to exact size and shapes.
Yeah.
There were skins all around the outer side, the walls and the roof. People had to find the animal skins. Other people had to tan them, which is cure them. Others had to learn how to dye them so they would look good enough for the Lord. They needed tailors. People needed to learn how to sew the curtains, the veils, the garments for the priests. Seamstresses, embroiderers, and weavers. Men had to learn how to work in bronze to cast the water basin, the large altar, and all the items for use in the tabernacle. They needed silversmiths to make the clasps that held the wall around it together. Goldsmiths to line the ark with gold, to build the cherubim and the solid gold menorah with its 7 branches sticking out. And together they worked and they learned how to be creative to build a beautiful tabernacle in which the Lord could interact with his people. this artistic sense stayed with them and probably came to the greatest fruition in David. We all have heard stories about David watching the sheep out in the hillside at night, writing songs, playing his kind of guitar, writing to the Lord. Great artistic sense. And that carried through. Remember when he was with King Saul, when the king got upset, he would sing songs to soothe him down. Later when he became king, he brought into the whole town. First Chronicles says David and all the Israelites were celebrating with all their might before God, with songs and with harps, lyres, timbrels, cymbals, and trumpets. Not only that, but all the Levites who were musicians stood on the east side of the altar, dressed in fine linen, playing cymbals, harps, and lyres, and they were accompanied by 120 priests sounding trumpets. Let me tell you, black churches didn't invent the gospel choir. The Jews did. Can you imagine 120 trumpets? And these were priests. I'm a priest. What do you do? Oh, I play the trumpet. Why? Because it was worshipful to the Lord, and it's what God wanted. God wants praise and worship, musical, that creativity. Amen. Now, when Jews first came to America, many of them quickly found their success. I mentioned last week that there were mostly two waves of times when Jews emigrated here. First was from 1890 to 1920, when those pogroms were going on in Eastern Europe, and literally millions of Jews came to America with almost no possessions. The second time was right after World War II, when those who had not been killed by Hitler, and he killed 2/3 of the Jews in Europe. And those who were left had no possessions, they had left their homes, had almost nothing, emaciated, extreme poverty, they came to this country. And yet almost always, the Jews who arrived in America within 1 or 2 generations achieved great prosperity. It's pretty amazing. Here's one reason why. Jews brought with them an ingrained understanding that money was essential not only for the good life, but for life itself. They were determined to manage their own fortunes, and the key to their economic ascent was to become entrepreneurs. Creative thinking and hard work. You know what these are?
Jeans.
Blue jeans, right? They're actually Levi's. Do you know where Levi's came from? Another Jew. Back in the mid-1800s, a Jew who had been born in Europe, emigrated to the U.S., started dealing with canvas. And that was when the gold rush, they discovered gold in California, you probably heard, and all kinds of people moved out there with get-rich-quick dreams of discovering their own gold mine. Well, this Jew named Levi Strauss, we would say Levi Strauss, he bought a ton of canvas and shipped it out to San Francisco with the idea to sell it to the miners for tents and also for covered wagons. Those were the days of covered wagons. But when he got there and he saw the miners, he had a new idea, because the miners were literally crawling into holes in the ground that they were digging and rubbing against rocks and mud. Their clothes were wearing out every day. So he took his canvas and made canvas overalls. And soon afterward, he switched and started using denim. He had a partner who came up with the idea to put metal rivets in the pockets so that the pockets didn't rip. That's why those metal things are in Levi's. So the pockets didn't rip on the miners. And in 1873, Levi Strauss got a patent for what he called riveted waist overalls, better known by his name, Levi's. Amazing. Creative. Gonna make covered wagons, and instead made pants that are still probably the most popular pants in the world. Praise God. Another example of a Jewish creative entrepreneur spirit is somebody I know you've heard of. His name is Ralph Lifshitz. You may not know him by that name though. He was again, had immigrant parents, New York City. His father was a house painter, but like a lot of immigrants, they sent him to college. However, like a lot of immigrant kids, after 2 years he dropped out. And he joined the army. When he got out of the army, he took a job in a clothing store as a salesman. He wanted to learn about business. He kept that job for a while, and then he got hired by a company that made and sold ties as a salesman. He was going on doing well as that, and at 26 years old, he actually created a wide tie. Those were the days like today of the skinny ties. And he created wide ties, which was popular in Europe. And he tried to convince his bosses into making them, and they didn't want to, so he quit. He had savings, like a good Jew does, and so he started his own tie company. He went to the clothing manufacturers and got them to give him for free the scraps. They were making dresses and blouses and shirts and cutting off excess. He took the excess material and made ties out of them. He used to go around to the small stores in New York City, selling a little bit here, a little bit there. He got his first break when Neiman Marcus, the fancy department store, bought 1,200 ties.
Wow.
He was so successful there, he thought, well, let me go into more, and he started creating other menswear. And then he had a very creative idea. He wanted to establish a brand, and he came up with the idea that, you know, I'll bet the way to do that is to make a logo. And I'm not sure there. You know what that logo is? Huh? That's polo. Ralph Lifshitz changed his name to Ralph Lauren. A little bit more common, a little bit more American. But it's interesting because you know what he said about these shirts, and you know why he started making the polo logo? Quote, there are tons of people with low self-esteem who will pay $70 for a $20 shirt if you put on a logo that tells everybody, I paid $70 for my shirt. 2016, Ralph Lauren's wealth was estimated at $6 billion. There's a lot of people with low self-esteem. Made that man rich. Creative though. Now I said there's 2%. 2%. It kind of reminds me of Jacob getting his brother's stuff. I mean, you might go, it's not quite above board, but why, why not? If people are going to buy the shirts. Right? I mean, needless to say, we guys, we know that they do the same thing with sneakers, right?
Yeah.
It's not what they're worth, it's what people are going to say, ooh, look what he's wearing, ooh, because you got low self-esteem. When you got high self-esteem, you don't care what people think of your shoes or your shirt, as long as you're clean, right? Anyway, that's another preaching. I'll let President preach that sometime. So I mentioned 2% of Americans are Jews, only 0.2% of the world's population are Jews. That's 2 in 1,000. 2 out of every 1,000 people in the world are Jews. 1 out of every 500. So you would think that if there's a list of people, 500 something, there would be 1 Jew. Well, last year, Forbes came out with its annual list of the world's billionaires, and in the top 15 people, there are 5 Jews. Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, Larry Ellison of Oracle, the software company, Michael Bloomberg invented an incredible, great way to work the markets, and also was the mayor of New York City 3 times, and Larry Page and Sergey Brin, the co-founders of Google. 5 out of 15, that's 33%. And notice, none of them inherited their money. They all made their money.
Yep.
There are several other people in the top 15 whose last name is Walton, and they inherited their money from their father, Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart.
Yep.
These 5 guys started with nothing, and look what they've got. The other thing is, notice, every one of those companies is creative. They're not just making cars or refrigerators, you know? They broke through. You know, but Facebook has changed the world, right? Changed the world, so has Google. What Google does, and believe me, Bloomberg's things have changed the whole investment world. That's why he's gotten so much money out of it. Oracle's the #2 software company behind Microsoft. You know, these guys are creative, they're Jews, they're successful. Now to give you a little reality check, what's $1 billion? To earn $1 billion, you have to earn $25 million a year for 40 years and never spend a penny.
Wow.
$25 million a year for 40 years will get you $1 billion.
Wow.
Just one.
And they've got what? 40, $50 billion? That is big time money. That comes down, for $1 billion, it comes down to $68,000 a day. 365 days a year for 40 years and never spend anything, and you'll have $1 billion. Last month, Mark Zuckerberg gave the commencement speech at Harvard University's graduating class. And as I mentioned, if you saw the promo on Sunday, he quoted a Hebrew prayer. And this is what he says: "As we sit here, I'm reminded of a prayer, Mishe Barach, that I say whenever I face a big sin challenge, and I sing it to my daughter, thinking of her future when I tuck her in at night. This is how it goes. May the source of strength, who's blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing." Now we know, and he as a Jew knows, who's the source of strength. It's the God of Abraham. And he's the one who has blessed those who have gone before. And notice, he doesn't say, "May you bless me. May you bring me success." He prays, "May I be a blessing to others."
Good word.
Now you think, this is the way he's done Facebook. He says, "I pray this every time I face a challenge. How can I bless others?" And look what Facebook has done for us. I mean, it's enabled us to communicate with everybody we know around the world. I've got a friend now whose wife's in England because her mother is sick, and they're talking through Facebook Messenger on the phone every day for free. What a service. Facebook did that. Now, they're making money. They got those ads. But his thought, his intention is, how can I serve people? That's very Jewish, and that's very Christian. That's very Jesus.
Yeah.
Remember, Jesus said the Gentile leaders rule over everybody. But you should not be that way, you, my Jewish followers. You should serve others. The greatest is the one who serves. Mark Zuckerberg knows that. Do you know that he and his wife have pledged to give away 95% of their money to foundations? That's a lot of money. I know, you're all thinking, where do I write a letter? No. To the foundation. Not that easy. But Jews are very big on giving. Jews are very big on foundations. It's what they call tikkun olam, which is repairing the world. And they see it as a part of justice that we're going to talk about in a few weeks. Because they say, quite simply, it's not like you got to have your arm twisted to give or talked into giving. You know, as we know, love is a cheerful giver. But more than that, they say, if I see somebody who's hurting and I'm not, that's not fair. I need to do something. That's just the way they live. That's the way they see the world. That's a great model for us to learn. That's part of the DNA we need to get in us. The idea of not, oh Lord, bless my business, I want more money. But Lord, how can I use my business to serve more people? What can I do for other people? Because what you give will be given back to you. The way you sow is the way you will reap. It works. So another week we're going to talk about family, but let me just say today that parents promote individuality and creativity in their kids, as this picture shows. There's a couple of, I'm not sure if those kids are trying to talk to somebody on Mars or read each other's minds, but they're obviously creative. They encourage their kids to value learning and education. And when choosing careers, they also think it's a good idea to get a good education first or work in the field for a while before you start your own business. Creativity even comes out in Dr. Seuss, who says, think left and think right, think low and think high. Oh, the things you can think if you only try. That's the truth. Now, not every Jew is a billionaire or an entrepreneur. As I said before, God wants us to be creative in every part of our life. Creative on the job. How can I do a better job? Keep your eyes open. Have a positive attitude. Don't complain. Create.
Yeah, I like that.
All right. I'm going to skip a little bit here for time's sake. Jesus is obviously one of the greatest, most creative people. The scriptures are filled with his stories. It's been said the scriptures are creative and the Bible is often high drama. He told parables that were without compare. And he did it with such gentleness. He thought outside the box. The woman caught in adultery, dragged to him. And the people wanted to either say stone her or else break the Bible, don't do what God says. And he creatively thought outside the box and simply said, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. And they all took a big gulp and slipped away. He didn't stare them down with judgment and say, you people brought here, that was wrong for you to do it. He was actually kind of scribbling in the dirt with a stick, it says, when he'd said that, let he who is without sin. And then he looked up and saw they were all gone. He was not judgmental, not pushy, not saying, well, you need to stop living that way. Another time, of course, we know that after he said, love your neighbor as yourself, somebody said, who's my neighbor? And he told the parable of the Good Samaritan. The Messianic Jewish scholar David Stern, in his Jewish New Testament commentary, said there had been enmity for centuries between the Jews and the Samaritans. So Yeshua, that's Jesus' questioner, would probably have subscribed to the prevailing low opinion of Samaritans among Jews, and could be expected to think that if a priest or a Levite refused the man aid, how much more would a mistrustful Samaritan also refuse him? Notice that when Jesus was telling the story and the priest went to the other side of the street, the Levite, he didn't condemn him. You know, there's actually a scripture that says we're not to touch unclean things. He didn't condemn him, he just went on and said, and then a Samaritan came. And of course, when he finished the story, he asked his listeners who acted as a neighbor. And they said the Samaritan, and he simply said, go and do likewise. Not judging, not... He didn't give them a lecture about the bad way they treated the Samaritans. He gave them an example, a creative example that touched their emotions. They could imagine themselves beaten and left naked on the street. They could imagine they got into the story, and so it made such an impact. I think that considering the bad relations between Jews and Christians for the last 2,000 years, that us Christians might consider stepping across the road and helping to wound the emotional hurts of Jews who have suffered so much to a great extent at the hands of the church. The core of creativity is faith. Hebrews 11:1 says, faith is the substance of things not seen. Faith is the substance. Faith is a substance. Now, wood is the substance that they use to make this stand on that. Glass is the substance on my screen of my laptop. Faith is a substance with which you can create your future with God's leading. Faith is a substance. That's creativity. That takes time to do. And I'll tell you one reason I think we don't do enough of it, because we Christians have forgotten the commandment that God told us to do forever, which is to keep the Sabbath. You know, we need time. If you're going to create, you need time, downtime, quiet time, scripture time. You know, the seventh day for most Christians now is sports and go out to restaurants and party, have fun. That's all good and it helps us unwind, but there's a better way to keep a Sabbath. It's in these kinds of DNA, living out the kinds of people, looking and reaching your potential. So many times when we get downtime, all we're trying to do is forget the past, and we never take enough downtime to dream about the future. That's what God wants you to do. To use this creativity, to think outside the box, to think about your life, not just barely making it through, you know, how you doing? Oh, I'm getting by. Oh, I'm hanging on. God doesn't want you to hang on. He wants you to take the land by storm. He wants to take the future. And that's what Jews have done. Jews have had this incredible experience in Israel today. Israel spends more per capita on research and development than any other country in the world. Because they know if they can invent things, it will bring prosperity. If they can do things that will help other people. As a result, Jews created pacemakers and defibrillators. They invented lasers. They invented stainless steel. A Jew invented the polio vaccine. When I was a kid, polio was a rampant disease, killing people. And a Jew not only invented it, but he refused to take a patent because he wanted wide distribution. He didn't care about making money. Incredible, huh? Proverbs, or not Proverbs, but, okay, in Israel, talking about Israel, the first prime minister of Israel says it's not enough to be up to date, you have to be up to tomorrow. When people come together, people think of Israel, well, it's all these Jews live there, they're all the same. No, 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 no. They're all Jews, but there are people there from Iraq, and from Argentina, from Russia, from America, from Ethiopia. They're all Jews, but they had no language together, they had no culture together, they were all different. But the diversity of Israel, like the diversity of America, is what creates such successful innovation and creativity. It's a wonderful thing to see. So, here's a scripture that I think, if you don't know, you should memorize. Remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth. You know, we talked about Romans 12 says we all have gifts. Do you know that inside you is the gift to make money? To produce wealth? Oh, well, that's not for me. Yes, it is. The Lord made you that way. And in His first chosen people, the Jews, we can see how much they believe it, and they have been blessed and successful because of it. He has given you the ability to produce wealth.
Amen.
Here's another Jew who did that and proved it, and I bet you didn't know this guy was a Jew. Mark Cuban, the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, and more widely known now as one of the sharks on Shark Tank. Not only has he been a great entrepreneur, but now millions of people see him encouraging every week other people to become entrepreneurs, to dream up, to work hard, to come up with something new, and they'll bless them with money so they can do it even more. Now, Mark Cuban, once again, is a Jew. His grandparents came to this country from Romania, and their name was Chabaninski. They shortened it to Cuban. His father was a simple auto upholsterer. His mother did assorted jobs around the neighborhood, but Mark was a hustler. At 12 years old, he wanted some of those expensive basketball shoes, and his parents said, if you want those shoes, you gotta earn it. He went out, and I don't know how, but he sold garbage bags door to door, and earned enough money to buy those shoes. When he was 16, he got his driver's license, and Pittsburgh newspapers went on strike. And this is when the only place people got their news was in newspapers. He drove every day 150 miles to Cleveland, filled up his car with papers, came back and sold them for a profit in Pittsburgh at 16 years old.
Wow.
He went to business school at the Indiana University. Well, why does a guy from Pittsburgh go to Indiana University? He's smart. He looked up the top 10 business schools in the country, found out which they were, and then researched to find out which had the least expensive tuition. That's where he went. One of the best, but most affordable. And when he was in college, he didn't go in with the idea of having other people pay his way or take out big student loans. He worked through college. He was a bartender, a disco dance instructor. I would have liked to see that. He was a party promoter while he was in school. I'll tell you one thing, it sounds to me like he thought to himself, if I'm going to work, I may as well have fun while I'm working. Within 10 years after college, he founded one of the first software companies and sold it for $6 million. 5 years later, he and a college friend who also went to the University of Indiana wished that they could have heard the sports games when they lived in another state, the football games, the basketball games, and they got the idea of live streaming. And they were the first company to do live audio streaming over the internet. Once it caught on there, every other school heard about it, schools across the country, professional teams, everybody wanted their games to go over the internet. 3 years later, they had 300 employees. In 3 months, 1 quarter, they took in $13.5 million in revenue. It spread that much. Creative idea. The 4th year, they sold the company to Yahoo for $5.7 billion. Creativity pays off. And now he's blessing. He's doing what Zuckerberg says on Shark Tank. He's helping other people get started with their new ideas. So, let's talk about practical steps you can take. Bring this together, kind of simply. I believe God wants every Christian to activate their spiritual DNA, creativity, and start thinking outside the box. First thing you can do is save money. Think about and plan for the future. Consider your whole life, not just today or this month or this year. Then learn to defer gratification so you can reach your goals. Don't go out to eat all the time. Don't go to the movies all the time. And if you do, stick a snack in your pocket instead of buying gold-valued popcorn. Second thing, read about, listen, and look for new trends. Keep your ears and eyes open to things going on in business, stores that become popular, what's going on in the arts and television, movies. Also new things about raising a family, serving others, drawing closer to God. Consider how you might prosper in life through creative choices and changes. And third, if you got kids, start encouraging individuality and the creative spark in your kids. What we all need to do is to step back from the challenges and situations in our lives and take a look at the big picture. You know, they say sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. What that means is we get so caught up in the little stuff, we never see the big picture. When you do step back, you get to see the wide horizon. You get to see many paths going through the forest. And again, I encourage you to consider taking some extra time on your Sundays to do this. Or start what the Jews do. Sabbath starts the night before. Whatever it takes though, start creating, start dreaming, start thinking, and start living, hopefully, what I've shown you today in our older brothers and sisters, the Jews, will give you some inspiration and a model of some of the ways that you can become more creative in your life. Again, today we've been talking mostly business and the arts, but this is in all parts of life. God wants you to sprout and bloom with creativity like you've never seen before. Let's pray. Father God, God of Abraham, I pray for everybody hearing me that they would have more of the creative faith of Abraham, more of the creative chutzpah of Jacob, the musical creativity, artistic creativity of King David, the salesmanship, creative salesmanship of Ralph Lipschitz Lauren, the practical creativity of Levi's inventor, the creative hustle of Mark Cuban, that they might be a blessing, have that creativity of Mark Zuckerberg, and most of all, that they might have the wise, loving, compassionate creativity of Messiah Jesus. Lord, let this bloom in their lives. Let it come and grow as things do grow in lives. Jesus said all things are possible, and nothing is impossible to you if you have faith. Faith is the substance with which you can begin to shape the future with the leadership of the Holy Spirit. I finish, Lord, by praying the prayer that Mark Zuckerberg has said. For everybody here, I pray, may the source of strength, you God, who has blessed so many before us, help these here find the courage to make their lives a creative blessing to others. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen and amen.